In this video, I'll be sharing with you the lessons that water taught the humankind from east to west. Before we start, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this. Also, be sure to comment down below your opinions on the said topic. Let's begin.
Universally, water is symbol of purity, fertility, life, motion, renewal, and transformation. The profound symbolism of water comes from its two vital qualities. It is most essential for existence, and it cleanses and purifies things by washing away impurities. Its power of transition from liquid to solid and vapor also make it special, and a symbol of metamorphosis and recycling. Ancient Greek philosophers like Thales and Heraclitus recognized the very nature of water. In the book Metaphysics, Aristotle says, "That from which is everything that exists, and from which it first becomes, and into which it is rendered at last, its substance remaining under it, but transforming in qualities, that they say is the element and principle of things that are, for it is necessary that there be some nature, either one or more than one, from which become the other things of the object being saved." Thales, the founder of this type of philosophy, says that it is water. End quote. The Sanskrit word of desert is marusthal, where maru means dead and sthala, land. Thus, a land without water is a land of death. On the other hand, Heraclitus teaches us that water is ever-changing and that you can't simply step into the same lake twice. He also shows how everything is in the state of transformation, thus being a process. As the wise Lord Krishna in Bhagavat Gitta said, "What belongs to you today belonged to someone yesterday and will be someone else's tomorrow. Change is the law of the universe." End quote. When it comes to this transformative nature of water, in Greek mythology, Proteus, the water god, turns into a lion, a snake, a tree. Thetis, the Nereid, transforms herself into a bird and a tree while courting Peleus. The waters of the rivers Styx and Acheron carry the dead to the other side, from the upper world to the underworld, resembling change from life to death. Karl Jaspers says that the sea is to me the most self-evident background of life, namely the presence of infinity. Infinite the waves, no wave like the other. Always everything is in motion, nothing constant, and all in perfect, infinite solidity of substance. Zimmer in the book Maya quotes the wondrous motive of someone who immerses himself in water and emerges into a new life, sinking from life dream to life dream in doing so. The Brahmin Sutapas went into the sacred waters in Benares. The Brahmin turned into a girl of a Chandala family that dwelled near the sacred bathing place at the mouth of the Koka. The girl was beautiful, grew up, and was married to an unsightly man. She bore him 2 sons, who were both blind, and later a daughter, who was deaf. Her husband was poor. The young naive woman went to the river, and there she always sat and cried. Once, however, when she had gone to the river to fetch water with her jug, she went down in the water to bathe, and out of the water re-emerged that Brahmin Supata, the pious, agile ascetic. The Chandala came to look for his wife and wept for her. The Brahmin comforted him and taught him also to dive into the metamorphosed waters. He had barely dived into the water when he was freed of all stigma, thanks to the magical power of the sacred bathing place. On a carriage of the gods, he went heavenward before the eyes of the Brahmin, light as the moon. The Brahmin, however, full of sorrow, also went into the waters of the Koka and descended into the highest heaven, only to come to earth again and live in a middle-class family. Being ill and suffering, he recalled his former life, went again into the waters of the Koka to ascend into heaven, to be reborn again, and to tell this story as Prince Kamadamana. Following the lines of ancient philosophers and sages, I'll exclaim that change is what unites. But what does it unite exactly? It unites the energies within our macro and microcosmos, as all is process, and things in that sense don't exist. This is the first lecture that water teaches us.
Water has no intrinsic form. Its form is given entirely by its context. Left to itself and taken out of other contexts, water will tend to form itself into a sphere. This minimizes the surface area, which is another way of saying that it tends towards the greatest self-connection and self-continuity. Water is selfless and accommodating, a substance that directly reflects all processes and activity around and within it. Taoism often compares the Tao to water. In fact, water is a common symbol in much of Asian philosophy. While different translations of the Tao offer minor differences in the text, the truth of this remains: in order to be one with the Tao, you must be like water. Water accepts all, it never resists. The alchemical symbol for water is an inverted triangle, symbolizing downward flow. The downward pointing triangle is an ancient symbol of femininity, being a representation of female genitalia. One of the four alchemical elements, water, has the properties cold and moist, and symbolizes intuition, the unconscious mind, and the enclosing, generating forces of the womb. In alchemy, water was deemed important, as it possessed many transformational and healing qualities. It was believed that the elixir of life could be made. To elaborate, the elixir of life, also known as elixir of immortality and sometimes equated with the name Philosopher's Stone, is a potion that supposedly grants the drinker eternal life and/or eternal youth. This elixir was also said to cure all diseases. Alchemists in various ages and cultures sought the means of formulating the elixir. The concept originated in ancient India or China, where the concept preceded that in Europe by millennia. The cleansing, healing power of the water is also known in Christianity as the baptismal water that washes away original sin and admits the baptized child into the church, the Corpus Christi. The Jews also baptized and admitted the proselytes into the community. The Gospel of John quotes Christ's words to Nicodemus: "Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again of water and the Spirit, he cannot see the kingdom of God." End quote. Above all, however, we would like to refer to the revelation of John. "And he shewed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal. On either side of the river was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month." End quote. In Islam, water is important, as it purifies us and washes away our sins. In Buddhism, the offering of water at shrines symbolizes the aspiration to cultivate the virtues of calmness, clarity, and purity with our body, speech, and mind. It reminds us to cleanse ourselves of our spiritual defilements of attachment, aversion, and delusion throughout the generating generosity, compassion, and wisdom of water. Water of the Ganga river is the purest, which has the power to erase one's karma, which can free a person from the cycle of rebirth that is dependent on the said karmic cycle. Her waters are used for all the purification rituals in India. Water of the Yamuna river is believed to be the life-giver, while the Saraswati river symbolizes wisdom, which was called down from heavens to extinguish a fire born from hatred and ignorance. The water of life cures the diseases of ignorance and the spirit ascending again to its divine source to regain its God-given adornments. This is the second lesson that water teaches us.
The reflection of water's environment takes place in rhythmical patterns. Any disturbance of the properties or motions of water is transmitted throughout the entire substance in the form of rhythmical impulses, either chemical or mechanical. Wave formation, that is to say, rhythm, is thus a primary property of water. Indeed, Theodor Schwenk, perhaps the most detailed modern observer of water, identifies its close connection with all rhythmical processes in time and space as one of water's three major characteristics. Surface waves are only the most obvious manifestation of this. Indeed, he notes that any body of water will have its own unique resonating rhythm in which it naturally oscillates, in particular and most strongly in connection with the moon's orbital rhythms. This is most obviously manifested in tides. The other two major characteristics he identifies are, first, water's connection with all metabolic processes in the great organism of the earth and in each separate living creature, and its sensitivity of boundary surfaces, indicating that water is a cosmic sense organ of the earth. This is the third lesson that water teaches us.
When it comes to Jungian psychology, water is the most common symbol for the unconscious, as Jung himself in the Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious exclaims, "The lake in the valley is the unconscious, which lies as it were underneath consciousness, so that it is often referred to as the subconscious, usually with the pejorative connotation of an inferior consciousness. Water is the valley spirit, the water dragon of Tao, whose nature resembles water, a yang embraced in the yin. Psychologically, therefore, water means spirit that has become unconscious." End quote. The inside of a liquid acts very differently than its outside, that part of the liquid that is in contact with something other than itself. This leads to a whole host of unique properties. Water is known as the universal solvent. It readily takes other substances and mixes them into itself internally, dissolving or at least suspending foreign substances in its own body, a property called adhesion. If we look at this psychologically, our collective unconscious dissolved into itself the millennia of evolutionary process and can surely dissolve our ego into itself if we are not careful. Along the lines of Thales, as water can be seen as a bringer of life and encompass the whole ego consciousness, it can be seen as the archetype of the Great Mother that lures the ego consciousness into its depths only to devour him in the Ouroboros of life and death cycle. Water is indeed, in the words of Schwenk, a sensitive chaos. This can be seen from various myths, the harpies that shriek in the night, the ancient monsters Charybdis and Scylla, the siren with their mesmerizing songs, and the wrath of Poseidon, to mention a few. The anima archetype, which brings the knowledge from these depths that so many drawn in, was and is the object of many songs, art, and inspirations. As Heinrich Heine in the poem Lorelei exclaims,
"I don't know what it means that I am so sad, a legend of bygone days that I cannot keep out of my mind. The air is cool and night is coming. The calm Rhine courses its way. The peak of the mountain dazzles with evening's final ray. The fairest of maidens is sitting up there, a beautiful delight. Her golden jewels are shining. She's combing her golden hair. She holds a golden comb, singing along as well, an entrailing and spellbinding melody. In his little boat, the boatman is seized by it with a savage vow. He does not look upon the rocky ledge, but rather high up into the heavens. I think that the waves will devour the boatman and boat in the end, and this is by her song's sheer power, fair Lorelei has done.
Or Edgar Allan Poe. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee, and the stars never rise but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And so all the night tide I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. In the Hindu religion, the churning of the Milky Ocean brought many treasures and wonders, 14 to be precise. Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and prosperity, Amirta, the nectar of immortality, and Hlahal, the most potent poison in the universe, which Shiva unfortunately drank. This teaches us that there are many treasures from the water of the psychic life-giving ocean, but that too much can be poison for the gods themselves. Zimmer goes further to say that the waters are the Gegenwelt, meaning counterworld, for the dry sphere of the waking day, into which the eye looks outward. In them the hidden nature of things is mirrored to the inner view. Down into the water means down into knowledge. Moreover, he goes that the waters of life are the womb of all forms of the world, as well as their grave in which they are reborn. They circulate in and build, they carry and dissolve every form. They are the palpable element of the all-divine Maya, whose nature the saints and seers tentatively try to grasp. They hold the secret of this Maya as the force of their own versatile nature, and do not yield it, but let it be tasted when someone opens up to them. How the world comes into being every hour outside as world gestalt in the flow of coming into being and happening, coming to the fore as gestalt of the inner world, from the darkness of the unconsciousness into the light of consciousness. All this can be experienced, but how could it be fathomed? End quote. As the saying by Joseph Campbell goes, the psychotic drowns in the same waters in which the mystic swims with the light. This is the fourth lesson that water teaches us.
As water is a conduit and it absorbs the powers of other entities, in the East there are certain practices. For example, they pour water on the Shiva lingas and statues of gods and then rub the water on their head or drink it, since they believe that water has attained some of their holy properties. Also, they will leave a small brass or copper pot filled with water in the night and cover it with a thin cloth. The water is said to have gained properties of moon and heavens that can improve one's health. The ageless waters, taking all forms of nature, circulating as its life, know everything. They have been present since the beginning and conserve everything in their liveliness. Nothing is forgotten. According to Victor Schauberger, apart from the more familiar categories of water, there are as many varieties of water as there are animals and plants. Were water merely the sterile, distilled H2O, as claimed by science, it would be poisonous to all living things. H2O, or juvenile water, is sterile, distilled water, and devoid of any so-called impurities. It has no developed character and qualities. As a young, immature, growing entity, it grasps like a baby at everything within reach. It absorbs the characteristics and properties of whatever it comes into contact with, or has attracted to itself in order to grow to maturity. This everything, the so-called impurities, takes the form of trace elements, minerals, salts, and even smells. Were we to drink pure H2O constantly, it would quickly leach out all our store of minerals and trace elements, debilitating and ultimately killing us. Like a growing child, juvenile water takes and does not give. Only when mature, for example when suitably enriched with raw minerals, is it in a position to give, to dispense itself freely and willingly, thus enabling the rest of life to develop. Before the birth of water, life was not. But what is this marvelous, colorless, tasteless, and odorless coolness which quenches our thirst like no other liquid? Did we but truly understand the essential nature of water, a living substance, we would not treat it so churlishly, but would rather care for it, as if our lives depended on it, which undoubtedly they do. As Victor Schauberger says,
"The upholder of the cycles which support the whole of life is water. In every drop of water dwells the Godhead, whom we all serve. There also dwells life, the soul of the first substance, water, whose boundaries and banks are the capillaries that guide it and in which it circulates."
Water is a being that has life and death. With incorrect, ignorant handling, however, it becomes diseased, imparting this condition to all other organisms, vegetable, animal, and human alike, causing their eventual physical decay and death, and in the case of human beings, their moral, mental, and spiritual deterioration as well. From this, it can be seen just how vital it is that water should be handled and stored in such a way as to avert such pernicious repercussions. This is the fifth lesson that water teaches us, and with which we end this video. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. If you want to support the channel, check out the Patreon link in the description box. Thanks for rebuilding Olympus.